What up, though? Welcome. And if you've been here since part one, welcome back. Beauty is to identity just as bias is to reality. The Negro in the New World. Or properly, the American, the only American there ever was, is, and will be in the New World. The American in America. The Negro in the New World by Sir Harry H. Johnston. First published in 1910. Chapter 22. The Negro and Crime, or properly, the American Indian and Crime. And on the picture, it says, the author on the Mississippi. So in the middle, that's the author of this book. On the Mississippi River. The negresses of the country districts in Louisiana, especially those who talk Creole French, wear a very ugly headdress, as may be seen by the photographs. Okay, if you look at the photographs, it says the hideous headdress of the Louisiana negresses, or the hideous headdresses of the Louisiana Indians. The Indians of the country districts in Louisiana, especially those who talk Creole French, wear a very ugly headdress, as may be seen by the photographs. With some of the old women, this bundle of rags and false hair is arranged so as to simulate a great backyard projection of the skull and gives them a hideous ape-like appearance. These are the words of the author, the one we just saw on the photograph, on the boat on the Mississippi River. This is his interpretation. Because as you can see, the author has on probably a 6-piece suit on, and he's on the Mississippi River. It's probably 90 degrees. So anything other than what he's wearing, he considers hideous. Some of the men, however, are good looking and with a refined version of the Negro features, a refined version of the American features. So he thinks some of the American males, he think they cute. Why? Because they have features that he finds attractive. Let's shake it. Neither men nor women give the impression of idleness. True, I encountered only one wandering minstrel playing plaintive airs on a guitar. But even he was working for his living. As to the drunkenness, there was little or no sign of it, possibly because the new prohibition laws were producing their effect. I believe, however, that the men gamble excessively, but although this is very regrettable from their own point of view, it is a stimulus to industry rather than otherwise, since the loss of their money compels them to keep steadily at work. While if they gain in lotteries by betting or at cards, they spend their gains on smart clothes and good living, which is beneficial to trade. To see the Negro at his worst, or properly to see the American Indian at his worst, I visited those parts of the vast city and suburban areas of New Orleans where the colored people or the American Indian people of the lower classes mostly congregate. I was escorted by an official of the police force. No restrictions were placed on where I went, but no doubt I was unconsciously guided. And possibly the worst parts of the town were withheld from my view, though, as a matter of fact, my very obliging guide seemed anxious to give me a truthful impression and to show me the worst aspects he could find of Negro life, or properly of American life. I came out from this inspection of bad New Orleans scandalized at what I had seen, but not so far as it affected the Negroes or affected the American Indians. I was merely amazed at the shamelessness of the whites, or Anglo-Saxons, or Caucasians. Here and there, it is true, I saw a tipsy Negro, I saw a tipsy American Indian. In one saloon, they were playing cards, but everyone seemed to be in a good humor. There were no angry voices. There was a marked absence of obscenity in speech, I should state, and no one complained of being cheated. In another saloon, to the music of a gramophone, some 20 Negro men, some 20 American men were dancing, but not indecorously. Here, there was not the slightest sign of drunkenness. Moreover, all these bad places seemed to be far cleaner than similar haunts in England. But at last we reached the streets of strange sights. We passed through a quarter of the town inhabited by Negro and colored prostitutes, inhabited by American prostitutes, and entered some of their houses, but none of the black or yellow women, none of the American Indian women thus encountered gave any signs in their outward appearance of the manner in which they earned their living. So were they in fact prostitutes? What gave him this impression? Let's move on. There was nothing immodest in their speech, gesture, or clothing. In fact, they might all have been the keepers or tenants of respectable lodgings, furnished with almost Puritan respectability, with old prints and lithographs illustrating scripture subjects, portraits of notabilities. Between 1850 and 1870, illuminated text, Longfellow's poems, Uncle Tom's Cabin, horsehair sofas, and Berlin wood antimacassars. But for the information of the police officer that they were women of the town and visited by white men as well as black, by Caucasians as well as Americans. We next entered a district in the vicinity of the great prison and of the police headquarters, the region under police supervision specially assigned to houses of prostitution. This quarter, besides its special Negro subdivision, besides its special American subdivision, was in the arrangements of the police and in the manners of the police, divided into geographical areas. Here was the street of Jewish brothels. There, 2 or more streets would be given up to the Italians or the Slavs, generally called Polacks and Bohemians. Slavs, slaves. This is where you get your idea of work, labor, employment as being slavery, based on the lifestyle of said Slavs. And lastly, there were the establishments of English-speaking women, Anglo-Saxons. And lastly, there were the establishments of English-speaking women, Anglo-Saxons. They say Anglo-Saxon Americans, but there is no such thing. The colored or Negro or blacks are the only Americans there ever were, are, and will be. Properly, American Indians. Canadians, English, and Irish, I did not notice any admission of Scottish nationality. How was he so sure? He knows by just looking at you. He knows your story. What do you think? This was one of I think they failed so far. This was one of the great sights of New Orleans, and should be, if the white race or Caucasian race or Anglo-Saxon race has any proper pride, one of the most disgusting, dishonorable sights in the world. What is one of the most disgusting, dishonorable sights in the world? Well, lastly, there were the establishments of English-speaking women. Anglo-Saxons, Canadians, English, and Irish. I did not notice any admission of Scottish nationality. This was one of the great sights of New Orleans, and should be, if the white race or Anglo-Saxon Caucasian race has any proper pride, one of the most disgusting, dishonorable sights in the world. Notice they called it establishments. He didn't get very specific, did he? The brothel establishment, brought to you by the Anglo-Saxon. Any person without let or hindrance can reach and perambulate these streets, just as one can pass at any time of the day or night from Regent Street to Soho. It is apparently one of the amusements in vogue among the lower classes and strangers in New Orleans and in 1 or 2 other great southern towns to stroll round the prostitution quarter after 10 p.m. Yeah, just stroll, right? Just for the fun of it. Yeah, just for the fun of it, right? Just to have this spectacle of lascivious, more than half naked, painted, and grotesquely costumed white women, Anglo-Saxon, Caucasian women spread before the passer-by or those who like to tarry. Every now and then, the women, tired of playing the spider, would walk out into the street or sit in their doorways accosting men. These are the Anglo-Saxon women. It was pathetic enough to see some of these poor things off duty, as it were, repairing to the coffee stalls. They then dropped their smiles and leers, though they appeared painfully incongruous in their ballet girl skirts and excessively low-cut bodices. the paint under the flaring light of the naphtha lamps looking such very obvious paint. It might even be streaked and furrowed with tears, tears that flowed at some little word of kindliness from a bystander that was not a brute, or at neglect, at some feminine quarrel, or from some passing shudder of disgust at the loathsome life they had compelled themselves to lead. The most shameless among these women were of our own race, Anglo-Saxon. They say Anglo-Saxon Americans, or the author says Anglo-Saxon Americans. Again, there is no such thing. He is mistaken. He would like to commit identity theft and move on, but I'm not going to move on. The most shameless among these women were of our own race, Anglo-Saxons, or girls from the old country who had somehow strayed across to the States. Yeah, they just strayed. Just took a long boat ride. They want to disown those women. When they were on their way, they were prized. But now they are a scar on the history of the Anglo-Saxon. Here in America, the fact is that much of the Negro's vice is excessive uxoriousness, unlimited adultery, and that here, as in Africa, there is a standard of decorum as regards actual physical and verbal decency maintained by the Negro, which is absent from many of the white peoples of the world. The fact is that much of the Negro's vice is excessive uxoriousness, unlimited adultery, and that here, the fact is that much of the American's vice is excessive uxoriousness, unlimited adultery, and that here, okay, as in Africa, there is a standard of decorum as regards actual physical and verbal decency maintained by the Negro, which is absent from many of the white peoples of the world. Within those 11 states of the South, which contain an approximate colored population or American Indian population of 7.5 million, within those 11 states of the South, which contain an approximate American population of 7.5 millions. In the 11 southern states, marriages between Negroes and Negroids and white people are illegal. In the 11 southern states, marriages between Americans and Anglo-Saxons are illegal. Americans and Caucasian marriage is illegal in those 11 states where the approximate population of Negroes is 7.5 million. According to Ray Stannard Baker and other white authorities, according to Ray Stannard Baker and other Caucasian authorities on the American problem, it says the Negro problem. At one time, it's the Indian problem in the States. A good deal of immorality still exists, more particularly as regards youths of the white race and colored women in a dependent position as domestic servants in the southeastern third of the United States, especially in the plantations of the country districts. And by colored women, they mean American women. There is, I am convinced, a deliberate tendency in the southern states to exaggerate the desire of the Negro or the desire of the American for a sexual union with white women and the crimes he may commit under this impulse. There is, this is the author, there is, I am convinced, a deliberate tendency in the southern states. And when he says in the southern states, he means those few Anglo-Saxons in the southern states. And you'll have to find out what states he means. But he means the small number of Anglo-Saxons to exaggerate the desire of the American for a sexual union with the white woman and the crimes he may commit under this impulse. They exaggerate how much the American, if you notice this, it says, I am convinced a deliberate tendency in the southern states to exaggerate the desire of the Negro for a sexual union with white women. So by Negro, they mean American male. American male. This is the case. This is what most of your reasons for Anglo-Saxons supposedly lynching Americans for is because the Negro's desire for a relationship with the Anglo-Saxon or Caucasian women. And again, you have to ask yourself, sure, there are Americans that have relationships with Anglo-Saxons, but it's not some huge thing. These could be considered outliers. And no, I'm not speaking about what they show you on TV. TV is to give you your thoughts. There are depraved white women in the States, as in England. There are depraved Anglo-Saxon women in the States, Caucasian women in the States, as in England, as in France, as in Germany, who have invited the attentions of Negroes or Negroids, who have invited the attentions of American Indians and have even been base enough when discovered to accuse the American man of the initiative. There are also undoubted cases of criminal Negro lust. There are also undoubted cases of criminal American lust. Horrible cases, as bad as those that can be found year after year in the English or American criminal records of white men or Caucasian men assaulting white women or Caucasian women and young girls. There are also undoubted cases of criminal American lust, horrible cases as bad as those that can be found year after year in the English or American criminal records of white men assaulting white women and young girls. Yes, this is a PDF file we're looking at. But not only can no excessive preponderance in this crime or misdemeanor be laid to the charge of the Negro or the American, but he certainly sins less frequently as regards white women than is the case with the Caucasian. In various sober-minded analysis of recent cases of assaults on white women by Negroes or by Americans, it has been shown by white writers or Caucasian writers as well as American journalists, they say Negro, that the bulk of these crimes were due to the maddening influence of vile whiskey and cocaine snuff, and a proportion of the assaults resulted from the temptations of proximity, Negro men being allowed to work on the farms of poor whites alongside white women drudges, the same temptation leading admittedly to a good deal of immorality among the white field laborers. The white field laborers. You didn't think there were white or Caucasian or Anglo-Saxon field workers, field laborers, did you? You keep hearing all this. There was a house nigga and a field nigga, and you pick which one you was. You never thought the house belonged to you. You never thought the harvest was yours. One or two episodes were acts of revenge for the seduction of colored girls by whites. 1 or 2 episodes were acts of revenge for the seduction of American Indian girls by Caucasians, and the remainder were attributable to dementia. I cannot recall a single recent instance of indecent assault or sexual violation on the part of a Negro against a white woman, in which the criminal case from the educated Negro classes or was a settled agriculturalist, a well-established tradesman, or any kind of citizen with a stake in the country. The only cases quoted in the press and in books are of those of artisans, farmhands, loafers, and uneducated semi-savages. Uneducated semi-savages. And if you want to know what a semi-savage is, or a semi-savage, an uneducated semi-savage, we have one on the picture. Take a look. This is what the author determines is an uneducated semi-savage. Yeah, a semi-savage. Portion of him is a savage, partly savage. Who does that man look like? We're not talking old, young, rich, poor, dark, light, tall, short, fat, skinny. We're not talking these things. This is what he considered is an uneducated semi-savage. This is what they think of your people. This is what they thought of your people. This is what they think currently of your people. Because this is what is thought of your people doesn't mean that the Anglo-Saxon acts on these perceptions of you. It just means that within the very fabric of the fact that they are foreigners, and they know this, it is something that is woven within the fabric of who they are. To think of you as a educated or uneducated semi-savage. The elimination of spirit drinking, or the elimination of fire water drinking and unchecked drug selling, will, together with extended education, go far to remove the cause of these rare and occasional attacks by the American man on the honor of the Anglo-Saxon or Caucasian woman. But meantime, the municipal authorities in the cities of the South should do all they can to elevate the white woman in the respect and estimation of the Negro by suppressing those public exhibitions of white debauchery described in the chapter. So they want to raise up the Anglo-Saxon woman's reputation by getting her to stop walking the whole stroll. It is a coincidence worth noting that in several recent cases of assault on white women in country districts, the Negro or the American convicted of the assault came from one or other of the seaboard cities that maintain these public brothels. The origin of lynching Negroes for the origin of lynching Americans for murder, attempted murder, violating a woman, or other serious crime against the white community goes back to slavery times, goes back to working times, goes back to slavery times. And when I say slavery, we just went over that there were Slavs here, right? Don't get the Kunta Kinte picture in your head. Don't get the shackles on the neck, wrists, and ankles in your mind. We're talking slavery, indentured servitude, waves of Europeans coming here for that purpose, but becomes most prominently noticed by American and English historians after 1845, when an increasing regard for civilization and decency was sending the slave accused of a capital offense for trial before a properly constituted court. Allusions to the violating of women or attempted violating of women, of white women or girls by Negroes or mulattoes or by American Indians are rare in the literature of the United States prior to 1870. And they said that English historians after 1845, when an increasing regard for civilization and decency was sending the slave accused of a capital offense for trial before a properly constituted court, they said that the violation of white women or girls by American Indians were rare in the literature prior to 1870. The KKK atrocities being merely looked upon as a reverberation of the Civil War. It was not till 1870 that free American Indians were charged openly with making attacks on the modesty or virtue of white women. These allegations at that period were confined to Tennessee, Mississippi, and Georgia, and lynchings occasionally followed either the charge or the condemnation. It is, however, really only since the last 20 years that the question as a racial indictment of savage lust on the one side and equally savage punishment on the other has become acute. And there is more than a suspicion that the American is sometimes falsely accused, and more than a dread that the lynching, with its medieval tortures, is less a grave punishment for vile erotomania or lawless violence on the Negro's part than the indulgence of a lust for cruelty and even nasty depravity on the part of the white people. Many an unoffending wayfaring American has been injured or killed during the last 15 years because white women or Caucasian women and even children have become panic struck by the foul story spread as to American Indian propensities and have wildly accused colored men or American Indian men of intentions which they never entertained, or they have misconstrued perfectly innocent acts and gestures. In the recent literature dealing with the subject, the evidence of several Negro or several American notabilities has been collected, mostly ministers of religion, to the effect that when running through a lonely suburb to catch a tram car, some silly fool of a woman, of an Anglo-Saxon woman, has started up from their path and begun to shriek for help. In some cases, the American notability relating the story has stated that his only chance of safety was to stand perfectly still and to rely on his known name, position, and antecedents. But it required great courage and presence of mind to do this. Others fled for their lives to avoid even the risk of identification. Justifications for lynching has been pleaded in that the accused culprit might be declared innocent by a jury or might be given an inadequate punishment if found guilty. It has been maintained that the only way to strike terror into the whole Negro or whole American Indian community, which is the whole of America, they could have just said strike terror into the whole America, was to have the man accused of assault on a white woman and captured under incriminating circumstances immediately executed by the mob, often in a most cruel and barbarous fashion. Sometimes to satisfy the mob conscience, the wretched Negro or the wretched American has been tortured till he confessed his guilt, and photographers have been present and been permitted to photograph the torture during the infliction either in broad day or flashlight if the proceedings were conducted in comparative darkness. The fact that numerous photographs and picturesque descriptions of lynchings, executions, tortures, or the physical or mental agony of the accused or of the victim of the crime should have been allowed without let or hindrance, even one might judge, arranged for the special benefit of the photographer, illustrates sufficiently the depravity of the uneducated white South. Can one even say with truth, uneducated? Can one even say with truth, uneducated? The crowd seems to consist frequently of well-dressed men and women who, the United States being what it is, were presumably well able to read and write. The descent of this road to barbarism is facile and swift. Example of it are more frequent in the South because that region, misled by the cessation of the KKK horrors, believed that lynching could be held in sufficient check. We have in mind a community in northern Alabama where the lynchings and burnings of innocent and guilty alike became so menacing that the neighboring sheriff at Wetumpka found it necessary to form a posse and round up the entire crowd, whose defense of white womanhood had created a new sport, nigger killing, or American Indian killing, superior to any other local amusement. 12 Caucasian men, 12 Anglo-Saxon men, 12 Afro-Eurasian men, 12 white men were sent to the chain gang or driven away, and there has been peace between the races and obedience to the laws ever since. So they say when they held the Anglo-Saxons accountable, there was peace. And it didn't happen again. Or there was peace. Why? Because they were held accountable. If you want to know about yesterday, look at today. How many are held accountable today? And the who is the important part. The great racial weakness of the Negro, the great racial weakness of the American is dishonesty of a petty kind. The European, and to a certain extent, the Asiatic, has got a stage farther than the American and is honest in small things, but possibly dishonest toward the general community in great matters. The Negro or the American is rapidly following in those footsteps. No doubt in the best organized American communities in the United States, one's fowls and turkeys, melons and oranges would be perfectly safe, but there would be considerable graft in municipal matters, or dishonesty in the collection of taxes, or the administration of private and public funds. It says, the great racial weakness of, let's read it like they wrote it. The great racial weakness of the Negro is dishonesty of a petty kind. The European, and to a certain extent the Asiatic or the Afro-Eurasian, has got a stage farther than the Negro and is honest in small things, but possibly dishonest toward the great community in great matters. So which one do you prefer? A tiny little white lie, or a big all-encompassing lie that affects generations to come? The Negro is rapidly following in these footsteps. No doubt in the best organized Negro communities or American Indian or American communities in the United States, listen, the best organized American Indian communities, one's fowls and turkeys, melons and oranges would be perfectly safe. But there would be considerable graft in municipal matters, or dishonesty in the collection of taxes, or the administration of private and public funds. Yeah, it's a problem when they try to get another to acquiesce to their system. Let's shake it. Great is the petty dishonesty, I am informed, in Haiti. One European finds it impossible to keep peacocks. Another loses all his ducks. A third catches Negroes or Americans, or in this case, Haitians, same as Americans, stealing his vegetables by night with the intention of selling them in the public market the next day. Yet the victims of Haitian thieves will tell you, and I should think with perfect truth, that you can send large sums of money by Negro or by Haitian or by American messengers from one part of Haiti to another. Neither the messenger nor the people of the villages through which he will pass would dream of dipping their hands into the money bags. Do y'all hear that? Y'all hear that, right? So your people, when you was doing things and doing work for your own people, you didn't take from your people. We're speaking of the Haitians here. The Haitians are Americans. They're from the Americas. We speaking of the indigenous Haitian people right here. But we can speak the same way about the American Indians in what is termed now the 50 states. Same thing. You didn't take from your people. Your people could trust you because y'all all had the same. Because everybody had the necessities of life. Everybody was self-sufficient. There is undoubtedly much petty dishonesty among the poorer, uneducated American people of the United States, but it is directed more against their black brothers and sisters than against the white community. The same may be said with regard to their crimes of violence, which are certainly excessively numerous from all accounts. The killing of a white man by a Negro is an extremely rare occurrence, though a good proportion of the burglars in the United States are colored men or American Indian men. The killing of Negroes by Negroes is a very common event and does not excite that horror throughout the Negro community, which it should do. While I was staying in Tuskegee, a Negro farmer or an American farmer, a respectable, hard-working man with a thriving cotton plantation, who's going to pick the cotton in Tuskegee for this American Indian farmer or this American farmer, a respectable, hardworking man? Who's going to pick his cotton? If you see him outside picking any piece of his cotton, cultivating any portion of his harvest, of his land, reaping the harvest, packing it up, you're going to think that he's a field slave, right? House slave, field slave. You've heard it. You've heard it. You've heard it from some of your great teachers who you think loved you so. While I was staying in Tuskegee, American Indian warriors, a Negro farmer, an American farmer, a respectable, hardworking man with a thriving cotton plantation, was stabbed in the back and otherwise mutilated by another American, who flung his body onto the road, a great blood patch still remaining as I drove by. The crime was committed simply with the idea of robbing the farmer of a few dollars in silver, which he had brought back from the market. The nigga who did it, the farmer, as he drove back, he accosted the farmer as he drove back from the town and asked for a lift in his buggy. And when they were well clear of the settlement, popped them off in a manner described. At least that's what the author says. The author, he drops jewels there. You always find a diamond in the rough. But I don't know if I could believe everything he say. Right? I mean, do you think if one of his own did that to the successful farmer in Tuskegee, you think he would have told on him? What the United States wants is a good rural constabulary, white and colored, white and American Indian. What the United States Corporation, what the United States wants is a good rural constabulary, white and colored, white and American. Best of all, a colored police. Best of all, an American police, an American Indian police, mounted and unmounted, under white officers. What we have today, a police to be under the orders of the state governor. What we have today. Best of all, an American Indian police, mounted and unmounted, under white, under Anglo-Saxon, under Caucasian officers. A police to be under the orders of the state governor. If she had such a constabulary as that of Jamaica, or of her own devising in Goa and in Panama, crime would diminish enormously, and insecurity of life and property diminish to as low a figure as in the British West Indies or Canal Zone. Do the right thing.